Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Got Massive Harem with Ino Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Those two words, mere shadows in memory, echoed through the dejected boy's head as he slowly packed his belongings. As he looked around his almost empty apartment, his eyes lingered over the remaining decorations. The alarm clock that never woke him up for important missions, the pile of his favorite ramen cups sitting in the corner, but most importantly, the picture of Team 7. With a sigh, a dejected Uzumaki Naruto left the room and headed out into the Konoha night towards the village gates. Kit, you should just forget about them and move on. Maybe you're right, furball. Naruto dashed into the night, dropping his hitai to the ground. Flashback. It has been months since a bloody and broken Naruto returned from his mission, hauling an unconscious Sasuke over his shoulder. Both shinobi had long since recovered, and the very atmosphere around the Hidden Leaf village was lighter than ever before. Sakura-chan. What is it now, Naruto? Wanna eat ramen after training? I got something to tell you. No. Come on. Pestered Konoha's #1 unpredictable ninja, my treat. Not interested. Exasperated, Naruto tried one last time. Sakura-chan, I just wanna. Naruto, for the last time, no. But, maybe it was the stress of working missions, training with Tsunade, as well as yet another rejection by Sasuke, but finally, something in Sakura snapped. Naruto. Sakura raised a clenched fist and set it ablaze with chakra. I am absolutely sick of you trying to ask me out on dates every time we get back from a mission. I have never and will never even dream about being with such a baka whose only dream is to be Hokage. Get a clue, Naruto. Sasuke is leagues better than you in looks, attitude, dedication, taijutsu, ninjutsu and genjutsu, and I care about him. Why the hell do you think I went through all of that training with the Hokage-sama? So you ask me out on a date, asshole. Just give up on me, give up on being the Hokage, and just leave me alone. Naruto made one last effort to reach out and calm the raging pink-haired Kunoichi. Back off, you monster, Sakura yelled, slapping Naruto in the face and strode away. Naruto's sapphire eyes flew wide open, and for the first time in his life, he felt his mask completely shatter. End flashback. Damn it, damn it, damn it. What will you do now, Kit? I don't know, but right now I can't face them, I need to leave for a bit. Hey, ready to do things my way. Single quote, comma, single quote. Look at what they've done to you, what have you done to deserve it? Single quote, comma, single quote. What are you going to do now? Single quote, comma, single quote. Kit. Okay. Fine, we'll do it your way. Yes. Now, first training, get ready to shout as loud as you can. And with that, the young shinobi perked up and raised a cry that could be heard throughout the lands. Yeah. Inside Konoha, Tsunade looks up, grumble, stupid hangover. Hinata turns over in her sleep, harder Naruto. Lee jolting up from bed, Yosh. The springtime of youth waits for nobody. At the village gates, a Kunoichi bent down to pick up the abandoned hitai. Oh, Naruto-kun. Inside the Cage Prefecture. Gaara, damn, I finally managed to fall asleep too. Land of the Waves. Inari sits up, I want a cookie. Unknown cave. Orochimaru mumbles in his sleep, perfect 10. 2 5-year-olds. Unknown Bathouse. Jiraiya looks up, damn, looks like I have some work to do. A few days later, by walking through the streets, it was clear that many people, especially the older generation, were celebrating the departure of the demon child. Some were subtle, some weren't. At a well-known bar, it soon became a custom to shout, "Great week, isn't it, just to be given one, on the house." This practice died down quickly after a certain angry patron hospitalized the customer with an axe kick that left a crater in the ground. The Konoha 12 continued with their regular lives. They were trained professionals, as was he. There was nothing to be done. 3 years later, throughout Konoha, Ino passed through the village gates, returning from a successful solo mission, but there was something else on her mind as she walked through the village, spotting familiar faces. Hinata was able to finally gain acceptance as the Hyuga heiress. Kiba was still a pervert, but had finally come to view Hinata as a sister, so he stopped hitting on her. Shino was himself. Neji was growing more irritable, but was no longer blaming things on fate. Tenten could be seen wiping away tears now and then, but largely trained with a renewed focus. Lee maintained his energy, shouting about a certain blonde shinobi's youthfulness and springtime of youth. Shikamaru and Choji kept with their regular routine. Shikamaru would stare at the clouds while Choji ate everything in sight. Ino was nowhere to be found. Sasuke and Sakura were growing closer together, perhaps comforting each other in spite of Sai's comments on Sasuke's lack of a. Occasionally, Sakura would wonder exactly what it was Naruto wanted to say. However, all of them shared a common thought. Naruto, where are you? In a distant, mysterious land. ACHOOOOOOOOOOOO. Bless you. One more year later. In the middle of nowhere. Well, I'm on my way back, a white-clad man said to nobody in particular, with a foxy grin starting to appear. Naruto-sama, I would advise you to refrain from being an arrogant prick upon your return, an older man jabbed. Well, after having an arrow kitsune locked in my body for so long, it's a wonder I'm still sane, and, the younger man's voice trailed off. A virgin, chortled the vulpine man as the pair drew closer to their destination. The laughter quickly stopped after they felt a threatening presence nearby. Naruto-sama, leave this to me. Minutes later, two sound ninja were lying on the ground, dead in a pool of their own blood. Blood which, for some reason, was still streaming from their noses. No longer able to contain his excitement, Naruto let out a primal scream. Quote, back in Konoha, Tsunade was at her desk, oblivious to the mountains of paper that threatened to topple over at any moment. Things these days were just too quiet. The Hokage missed seeing the exuberant youth burst in angrily demanding harder missions. She was even wishing she could hear the familiar, Ba-chan, cry one last time. Still, she felt deep inside that he was still alive, waiting for the right moment to make his return. After all, he was the #1 unpredictable ninja, right? Suddenly, there was a faint poof as a masked Anbu appeared, startling Tsunade out of her reverie. The Anbu soldier placed a scroll in her hands. As Tsunade continued reading the scroll, her eyes got wider and wider. Her eyes, previously hazy, had a sharp glint. Summon all the Junins and Anbu captains to the stadium at once. 5 minutes later, Tsunade was standing in front of the pride of Konoha, the elite force that had obtained the greatest respect of all the hidden villages, where she made a startling announcement. It appears that a terrible situation has risen. Orochimaru has returned. There was a noticeable shiver through the shinobi. I thought he was dead. Didn't the white flash finish him off? As well as the rest of the Akatsuki? Tsunade raised a hand to quell the voices. And that's where our troubles start. The Akatsuki are also back, and have joined forces with Orochimaru. They are currently making their way to Konoha and will be here in 3 days. We will now be commencing emergency defensive procedures. Dismissed. With that, the shinobi split off to their respective stations. Tsunade heaved a sigh, oh brat, please hurry back. Loud shouts and explosions could be heard over the constant clang of kunai and shuriken. At each front, the Konoha ninja seemed to be holding up well, in spite of the massive onslaught of sound ninja. Lee and Guy were back to back, surrounded by a steadily increasing pile of bodies. For once, the two were no longer thinking about youthfulness, or pulling strange sunset genjutsu. A trio of foolish sound chunin jumped into the fray, brandishing katana. Without breaking stride or looking back, Lee lashed out behind him with a fierce kick, catching the first wide-eyed chunin in the gut, and flying into the pile of broken bones and dead bodies. Quickly pivoting on his left foot, Lee turned around and threw a punch right through the guard of another Chunin. The third Chunin met a similar end when the guy had his nunchaku out and was dealing heavy damage left and right. Still, the two were fighting hard. Guy had opened his sixth gate and subconsciously noted with pride that his former pupil only had his fourth gate open. Gotta do extra training, he thought, smashing in a shinobi's face while avoiding random shuriken and kunai thrown his way. Neji, Hinata, Hanabi and Hiyashi were in another area, fighting off the invaders in true Hyuga style. If Genkin from one Hyuga was scary, 4 at once was absolutely terrifying, comparable to the Tsukiyomi. 4 Junin flew through the air, each throwing a pair of windmill shuriken. Cage shuriken jutsu. The 8 shuriken became 50, as they flew in from all angles. Neji smirked and activated his Kaden. The Junin could only stare as the lethal weapons fell down to the ground, leaving the young ninja unharmed. The 4 Junin gulped. They knew what was coming next. The 4 Hyuga members' eyes contracted as they activated the Byakugan and slid into a stance that promised a lot of pain. No less impressive was the battle that the Uchiha survivor fought. With the dreadful Chidori lighting up both arms and both legs, Uchiha Sasuke fought like a man possessed by a demon and was now locked in fierce combat with the asshole who had promised him the world, but tried to take his soul instead. Damn it, he's still strong after all of these years. What is the secret behind his immortality, anyways? He thought, twisting around Orochimaru's Kusanagi. Sasuke swiped across Orochimaru's body with a roundhouse kick and aimed a Chidori-laced thrust at his face. Other equally impressive battles raged outside the gates of Konoha, but nothing compared to the epic struggle that the legendary Sannin Jiraiya and Tsunade fought against the miraculously revived Akatsuki. Katsuyu and Gamabunta towered over the battling shinobi in an effort to even the odds. Even with the help of the 2 boss summons, however, the Sannin were still being pushed backwards by the incredible strength of the Akatsuki members. That's strange, thought Jiraiya, they were never this strong before. Their stamina is almost as great as the little brat's stamina. Jiraiya's musings were quickly brought to an end as the Hokage punched the ground with all of her might, causing massive tremors that momentarily stopped the battle. Kami, that was scary, thought Jiraiya as the battle went on. Unfortunately, the battle was not going well. Sure, the elite ninja were living up to their name, but it was evident that they were running low on chakra reserves. There were only a few sound ninja left, but Orochimaru and Amatsuki were still going strong. How, panted Sasuke. Stupid, I'm immortal, it's no wonder I let you run away, Dobi, replied Orochimaru. Meanwhile, the remaining Akatsuki members stood, slightly winded. Tsunade had just separated Zetsu's weird flytrap from the rest of his body with a chakra-powered kick. Weird little bastard, she thought, almost fainting from sheer exhaustion. Next to her, Jiraiya stood panting, covered in wounds. As the enemy slowly advanced forward for the kill, a nerdy silver-haired shinobi holding a pair of glasses in one hand started to chuckle inwardly. Tsunade hung her head. What am I fighting for? She asked nobody in particular. Since when have I been so devoted to protecting this village's Hokage? Jiraiya smiled sadly and answered, I think you know the answer. The two were weakening and they knew it. In their prime, this battle would have been a fierce struggle, but they would have had the advantage. 30 years had not been kind on the two Sennin, even though with Tsunade, it wasn't immediately obvious on the outside. We can't give up yet, otherwise we wouldn't ever be able to face Naruto, the two thought, struggling to get back onto their feet. Suddenly, there was a massive burst of chakra behind them. The shinobi all turned and searched for the source of this new strength. There, on top of a village gate stood 2 men. The first man was wearing a black ninja gi, his face was almost entirely hidden, but his dark red eyes conveyed great wisdom and something else. Next to him was the actual source of the previous burst of chakra. There stood a man with a regal bearing. He wore a pure white cloak that billowed in the wind with a matching turban that completely covered his face. There was a pause, as the Konoha shinobi looked at this new arrival with suspicion. The bright blue eyes crinkled in amusement. There was a brief flash, and then the turbaned stranger appeared between the exhausted Konoha ninja and their enemies. Turning to face the shinobi of Konoha, he spoke in a husky baritone voice. "Things will be all right now. I'll crush these assholes and punish them for their crimes." Turning back to face Orochimaru and Akatsuki, the man growled, "Now, it's time to send you bastards to hell," sending chills down the spines of all the spectators. Hidan was the first to step up and challenge the stranger. The shinobi in white smirked and proceeded to go through a series of complicated seals that nobody watching knew. His eyes went blank for a second, as did the other man's. "Hey, brat, you'd never have guessed it, but. Haha, you're right. I wonder why I didn't notice it before." By now, Hidan was ready to charge forward, but before he could even flinch, there was another flash and the white ninja was behind the death-obsessed psychopath. "What the?" he shouted, confused, but his eyes widened as he heard what white shinobi was saying to him. "And that's when I figured your technique would really help out your life. I mean, this way, you two are guaranteed to finish together. Just be sure to get her blood beforehand." With a wink, the mysterious stranger jumped back to his original position and waited. A faint blush crept over Hidan's cheeks as he stammered, I can't do this anymore, other important engagements, I have to quit," leaving the confused Akatsuki yet another member short. As realization of their opponent dawned on some of the enemy, a couple more antagonists stepped up to fight, but the rest blanched and disappeared, leaving the Konoha ninja even more confused as to what was going on. Orochimaru and Kabuto were the only ones left standing, somewhat bewildered at the sudden betrayal. The two slowly inched their way forward, but stopped as they saw the white-clad warrior's eyes turn crimson red, which went unnoticed by everybody except for Orochimaru and Kabuto. There was a brief pause before the shock registered on their faces. The white shinobi flashed through a series of hand seals so fast, Kakashi and Sasuke blinked their eyes, wondering if they were seeing double. Hidden technique. Return to youth. Oh shit, thought Orochimaru as he pissed his pants. What the? Thought Kabuto. Naruto focused for a moment, his jutsu lighting the area momentarily before he smiled. He was pleased at this new technique. It allowed the user to forcibly modify the personality to return the victim to childlike innocence, innocence that ironically Naruto would never experience. Kabuto was seated on the grass, plucking up loose blades of grass and scattering them to the winds. The subtle, yet scheming gleam in his eye was replaced by one of youthful innocence. As the grown man continued to pluck away the foliage of Konoha, a bird flew by, startling the previously fearless shinobi. As his hand flew back to regain his balance, he squished an ant on the ground. Tears started to well up into the eyes of the previously cold-hearted man as he lamented the death of the poor insect. The group then turned their attentions to the other ninja, first with a look of consternation, but then a growing smile. Orochimaru dropped Kusanagi as a butterfly flew by. Pretty, he murmured, chasing the harmless creature around the battlefield. The others looked on with a strange mix of horror and amusement as Orochimaru started to roll around, frolicking with the bunnies and squirrels. Naruto smiled underneath his turban. Jiraiya and Tsunade were doing their best not to break down and laugh at the sight of their psychotic ex-teammate and his subordinate playing like children, when they heard a chortle from the least likely source. Aburame Shino, after years of hiding underneath his uniform and sunglasses, snorted at the ridiculous sight of Orochimaru and Kabuto frolicking together. The bug user's outburst cut the tension in the air as everybody started to laugh, all dignity forgotten. Orochimaru and Kabuto linked arms and skipped along towards the land of the flower fields while singing a stupid song about being fucking teapots and getting steamed up. A sudden thud made the group look back at the mysterious visitor, who had just collapsed face first onto the floor. Before any of the concerned leaf shinobi could make a move, the other mysterious visitor appeared in front of Naruto and poofed away. Minutes later, the duo was resting in a small cave. You did good, Kit. Thanks. The village was in an uproar, as Anbu officers were sent left and right to look for the unknown pair. Lee and Guy were at the forefront of the chase, spouting the same crap about youthfulness. Yosh. The two heroes have surely shown great youthfulness. Screamed Lee. Hi. They are surely in their springtime of youth. Responded Guy. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Tenten and Neji quickly separated the youthful duo before they could complete the deadly Kinjutsu, Sunshine and Crashing Waves Jutsu. Everyone was so busy trying to break up the gruesome spectacle that they missed the two figures that flew over their heads. Not that they would have been able to see even if they were paying attention. Tsunade was once again at her desk, surrounded by paperwork. Her eyes were shut as she concentrated on the odd feeling fluttering through her chest. That man in white. Why was he so familiar? Tsunade tried to rid herself of this odd feeling, when a voice shouted out. A very annoying voice. Wake up, Tsunade Baa-chan. Tsunade jerked awake at the sound, ready to lash out at the perpetrator dressed in white, when the words registered in her mind. Falling back into her seat, Tsunade could only stammer, Naruto. Naruto let his turban fall, only to be greeted by a fist in the face. Tsunade strode over to the young man, peeled him off the wall and enveloped him in a crushing hug. I missed you so much, don't ever leave me like that again, Naruto-kun, nay. Tsunade quietly wept tears, but this time, they were tears of joy. And that's what I want you to help me do, finished Naruto. Tsunade could only stare at the young man that appeared in front of her. Naruto was all grown up. His face exuded confidence, bright sapphire eyes sparkling. With a slight blush, Tsunade noted that he had become handsome since she last saw him. He's downright sexy, too. What I wouldn't give to have been born 30 years later, or what you would give if you were born 30 years later. We'd take the legendary sucker routine to a whole new level, she thought, stifling a nosebleed. In spite of all this, she could sense that Naruto had not lost any bit of his boyish charm that she had grown fond of over time. In spite of all the harsh treatment through his life, Naruto was still able to keep that wide grin on his face, which truly warmed her heart. Naruto darted around Konoha, executing his plan in order to get ready for his grand return. After all, Konoha's #1 unpredictable ninja had to live up to his reputation, right? The following day, the entire shinobi population of Konoha was gathered at the stadium grounds, wondering what was happening. They looked down at the stadium grounds and saw two of their esteemed officers, Hitaki Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke, waiting with the Godime. Once the crowd settled down, Tsunade made her announcement. I know you are all aware that we most likely would not have won the battle a few days ago had it not been for the assistance of two mysterious strangers. Since then, I have talked with the one in white, and I have agreed to make him and his companions Konoha nin in return for the great service they have done for us. You are therefore gathered to witness the entrance examination, which will determine the rank of our newest shinobi. This will be a match between a team of Hitaki Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke versus the White Flash. There was a murmur of surprise, as the shinobi couldn't fathom who would be insane enough to challenge two of the best shinobi to a fight at the same time. Baka. Crazy. Troublesome. Chips. Well then, continued Tsunade with a small smile, let's start. Hell yay, let's get this party started. With a poof, Naruto appeared, identity still masked. Kakashi and Sasuke felt a sudden chill go up their spine. Hajime. Before anyone could blink, Naruto disappeared in a quick flash, one that not even the Sharingan could track. A massive killing intent burst from right behind Kakashi, as Naruto went through a series of hand seals. The bystanders looked concerned, worried that their beloved Junin would be the target of a deadly jutsu. Sakura put a hand to her mouth. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Jiraiya started to laugh, as a growing suspicion became definite certainty. Oh shit, thought Kakashi. Naruto completed the dreadful taijutsu, shouting Senengarashi, causing Kakashi to fly into the air, hands clenching a sore butt. We ain't done yet, right Kit? Yay. Naruto pulled out a small, orange book. The cover read, Ika Ika, Paradise Volume 1, Limited Edition. Thanks to his Sharingan, Kakashi could still read the cover in spite of the large pain in the he was experiencing, and his eyes widened at the sight of such a rare book. Naruto threw the book towards Kakashi, who had a familiar perverted grin. Naruto then made a series of hand seals and brought his right hand to his mouth. Kaden. Gokakyu no jutsu. Tsunade started to chuckle. Jiraiya went from a laugh to a complete meltdown, as did Kakashi. The two had anime-style tears streaming from their faces as their beloved book was burned to ashes. A quick blow to the neck quickly subdued the perverted Junin, leaving Sasuke and Naruto staring at each other. Nani? The crowd shouted, amazed that the copy nin could be defeated easily. They turned their attention back to the fight on hand. The Sasuke 5 years ago would have been overcome with rage at this new development. A new stranger had come up from nowhere and defeats Kakashi in a few minutes. Maybe it was the influence of his ex-teammate, but Sasuke was no longer the cold-hearted arrogant prick of old. Sure, he wasn't a bundle of unbridled energy, and sure, he often snuck sidelong glances at Sai once in a while, but he was no longer the broody teenager that ran away crying when Naruto proved to be the stronger man. Settling into the famous Uchiha Taijutsu stance, Sasuke prepared to launch an assault. The strongest Uchiha charged into battle as onlookers drew a breath. The crowd was in awe. It had already been an hour, and neither combatant looked ready to give up. Sasuke had been hard-pressed to unleash a wide array of ninjutsu, only to find them countered by an even greater force each time. Finally, Sasuke had reached the limits of his patience performing a series of hand seals. Sasuke lit up his arms and legs in the familiar Chidori. Sasuke prepared his self-created taijutsu style, Chidori Jutsu. Getting serious now, aren't we, Sasuke-chan? Naruto taunted, much to Sasuke's chagrin. The pride of Konoha leapt into action once more, and the two engaged in a deadly dance. Jiraiya took out a new notebook, mumbling to himself about branching out as an action thriller writer. Sasuke would lash out a Chidori-laced chop to Naruto's neck, but was surprised to see Naruto arch backwards into a bridge. Pushing off of his hands, Naruto landed a fierce kick in Sasuke's stomach. Recovering, Sasuke was able to slip past Naruto's guard and sweep his leg underneath Naruto, forcing our hero to jump into the air. Sasuke smirked as he followed Naruto's journey. Systematically, Sasuke began to attack Naruto's vital points, cutting tendons and tearing through muscle. Some of the younger genin were shocked at the brutality with which the battle was fought and passed out right away. Sasuke led up on the assault to give the challenger a chance to recant. You have fought a fine battle, one worthy of my respect. However, it is now time to give up. Yield now. To the surprise of the almost everyone, the Alabaster Ninja managed to get back onto his feet once again, panting hard and clutching his left arm. I can't give up, he said, I never go back on my word, and I never give up. This is my Nindo. With this declaration, Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Only one man is able to truly say that. Never defile those words. With a roar, and a blazing Sharingan, Sasuke shot forward, with the Chidori focused on his right hand. Where have I seen this before? Thought Naruto with a hint of irony. With that, Naruto moved to intercept the Uchiha. A multicolored ball of chakra started to swirl around his right hand. Oh ho, thought Jiraiya, chuckling, the Gaki actually did it. Tsunade's eyebrows were raised to the point where they started to retract into her hair. No way. Meanwhile, the onlookers watched with great anticipation. As they drew closer, there was a look of sheer determination on Naruto, while Sasuke started to feel a tiny bit of doubt creep into the back of his mind. Kinda familiar. Huh, shouted Naruto, raising the arm containing the completed Rasengan. I seem to remember this exact same situation a while ago, even if nobody knows the truth behind the matter. The shock on his face made Sasuke slow down and lower his hand just a bit. Naruto retracted the Rasengan and looked Sasuke in the eye. However, Sasuke was moving too fast and was unable to react. Tsunade gasped in horror as she watched Sasuke plunge his fist into Naruto's heart. Hey! Smirked Naruto. With a poof, the cage bunshin vanished into thin air. Tsunade let out an inaudible sigh of relief and looked about for the real shinobi. Up in the stadium, a concession stand vendor looked on in surprise as the man who was supposed to be fighting was running around looking for some ramen. Suddenly, the man shuddered and disappeared in a flash, leaving the mystified vendor with a bowl of uneaten ramen. Back on the battle turf, Sasuke tried to collect thoughts and composure when Naruto made his reappearance. Damn it, thought Sasuke, I'm running low on chakra, and if this guy is who I think he is, then I'm in trouble. The fight resumed, but it was clear that Sasuke was at a disadvantage. His movements were slower, and he looked short of breath. Finally, Naruto vanished in a flash only to appear behind Sasuke. A quick blow to the back of the head brought Sasuke to his knees. Naruto then pulled out a scroll and summoned a pair of daggers, one as white as snow and the other as black as night. Naruto reached down and lowered the white one to Sasuke's eyes. With a flash, the dagger quickly flashed across Sasuke's forehead, leaving a gash across Sasuke's Hitai-8. Told ya I could do it on my own. Sasuke's eyes opened even wider as he recalled the defining moment. Flashback. You can't even scratch my Hitai-8, smirked Sasuke as the two prepared to battle. End flashback. Nah, Naruto, you're back, gasped Sasuke as he fell unconscious. Naruto reached up, untying the turban, letting the white cloth fall to the ground. There was a large chorus of gasps and shouts as the spectators started to recognize Konoha's #1 unpredictable ninja. Kai! Shouted many shinobi, checking to make sure they were not under genjutsu. Naruto snickered. I thought that you guys wouldn't believe that I'm actually Naruto, so I planned a couple of things in advance that should assure you that I am indeed Naruto. Now, if you could all take a look up at the Hokage monument, I believe that you will see something Konoha hasn't seen in quite a while. The shinobi followed Naruto's gaze to the Hokage monument, and were shocked to see that the faces were covered in graffiti once more. Iruka slapped his forehead and sighed, that's Naruto, alright. There was still a bit of doubt in some of the other shinobi's eyes, especially those that did not know that Naruto was responsible for the famous Hokage makeover of many years ago. I know what some of you are thinking, that this isn't enough to show that I'm the real deal, declared Naruto, so I took the liberty of preparing something else that should prove my identity. Now, if you would all follow me. Naruto led the group along the familiar road to Ichiraku's ramen, where 50 bowls were already laid out. When they got there, most of the shinobi started to grin. Naruto's insane appetite for ramen, especially Ichiraku's, was well known among the shinobi. Now, what exactly is he planning to do? The crowd wondered. Now, you all are wondering, what exactly do I plan to do with all this ramen, right? Naruto smirked as Tsuki and Ayame started to dish out bowls of ramen. This here is a test of my love of ramen, as well as my improved skills these past few years. You see, while I was busy training, I traveled the lands, visiting many ramen vendors, but none of them could compare to the heaven that is Ichiraku. Here, Tsuki rubbed the back of his head and Ayame blushed a little. One day, when I was meditating, I realized that my method of ramen consumption was a bit crude. All of the shinobi who had ever watched Naruto eat sweat dropped at that. Then, one day, I was struck with a sudden inspiration, a stroke of genius if I do say so myself. Indeed, this is a skill that will be of great use when I finally become Hokage. I wanted to save the honors of testing this out until I got back to Ichiraku's. So everybody, pay very close attention. Naruto made a cross with his fingers and performed what has now become the most overused jutsu in his life. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 50 Naruto clones sat down and pulled out a pair of chopsticks, shouting, "Itadakimasu." The Bunshins rapidly finished their bowls of ramen, slamming the bowls down with a content sigh at the same time. After all of the Bunshins poofed out of existence, Naruto gave a contented sigh. Man, it really does feel like I've eaten 50 bowls of ramen. All of the shinobi's mouths hit the floor as Sakura punched Naruto in the gut. You called us here just because you found a faster way to eat your ramen. Is this what you spent the last 4 years doing? Haruno-san, what did you do that for? Sakura shuddered at the cold manner Naruto used to address her. For your information, this idea was true brilliance. Now I don't have to wait as long to eat all of my ramen, and I still get the same amount of enjoyment when it's all said and, he was cut off as Tsunade hit him in the face with a Chuck Norris roundhouse kick. Gaki, do you honestly think that you can become Hokage with those stupid ideas of yours? Seriously, if you want to be Hokage, you have to be responsible and make better use of your time and effort, Baka. Naruto merely grinned. Actually, Ba-chan, this little demonstration was meant to help teach you how to be a better Hokage. Were you ever wondering how the Yondaime was ever able to finish all of his paperwork? Well, I think I've stumbled upon the answer right here, Tsunade Ba-chan. Tsunade turned beet red as she realized what Naruto was hinting at, and a tick mark appeared on her forehead, while everyone else sweat dropped. She quickly created 10 Kage Bunshins and had them run to the Hokage Tower to do a bunch of paperwork. She then quickly enveloped Naruto into another hug, but then quickly stepped back, blushing. There was a sly grin as the Kunoichi could see what caused this reaction. When Naruto was busy slurping ramen, he had taken his cloak and jacket off, revealing his clothing underneath. Like his cloak, both his shirt and pants were the purest white, but there was an orange fox silhouette across the back of the shirt. His pants, no longer a hideous shade of orange, hinted at a strong lower body. His shirt fluttered in the wind, pressing the fabric against a muscular and well-toned body. The sleeves were rolled up to reveal a complementary pair of fully loaded guns. Naruto reached up with one hand to rub the back of his head. This subtle movement allowed the Kunoichi to glimpse Naruto's muscles in action, causing them all to turn various shades of red, while most of them started to drool. The men simply watched in disbelief and jealousy, although Sai was taking quick glances out of the corner of his eyes and making quick sketches in a notebook. A loud thump startled the shinobi out of their reverie, as 2 Kunoichi, both with activated Byakugan, fainted and fell to the ground with a tiny bit of blood trickling down their noses. Why didn't we use the Byakugan like this before? The 2 Hyuga daughters thought. Meanwhile, Sakura was in a daze. Naruto had reappeared out of the blue to defeat Orochimaru and the Akatsuki at the same time. Then, he beat Kakashi and Sasuke in a 2-on-1 fight, followed by an old prank, as well as the interesting ramen demonstration. What surprised Sakura most, however, was not how good-looking he became, although she was one of the Kunoichi who drooled once the cloak came off. Instead, it was the cold, impersonal manner in which Naruto had addressed her. Sure, she had said some mean things to him during her last meeting, which probably lead to his disappearance, but she still couldn't understand why Naruto was still bitter and distant, or the Hokage, for that matter. Flashback. You said what? Shouted Tsunade, furious. Sakura had just finished tearfully describing her final meeting with Naruto and was now trembling in fear at the sight of the Hokage. Tsunade could not believe her ears. She had always known that her apprentice had always been harsh with her favorite blonde, but the abuse that Sakura had laid on Naruto this time was uncalled for. She brought a hand down onto the desk, turning the heavy wooden desk into splinters, causing Sakura to sweat drop. It took all of her self-control to not empty her bladder as Tsunade opened her mouth once again, but this time instead of a yell, Tsunade spoke in an even voice. Haruno. Sakura shuddered at the chill in Tsunade's whisper. Please leave this office at once. Sakura was gone faster than she could say, Kyubi. The next day, Sakura was back in the Hokage's office, almost unable to hear what was coming next. And that's why I can no longer have you as my apprentice anymore. Sakura's mind went blank. Unconsciously, she felt her legs walk out the door and take the long steps to her house. She knew she was wrong to yell at Naruto. He was just being himself, and she had completely crushed him. She decided that she would go see him later that day to apologize. End flashback. By then, the two Hyuga sisters had fully recovered from their fainting spells. By then, the crowd had gotten over the shock and was now bombarding Naruto with questions and compliments. Where have you been? Just how strong are you? Yosh, I see that your flames of youth are burning brighter than ever. Will you go out with me? Will you marry me? What were those jutsu you used the other day? Did you seriously master the legendary Hiraishin no jutsu? Will you have my babies? We must have a spar sometime, and if I lose, I will run 500 laps around Konoha on my index fingers. If I cannot do that, I will drink a gallon of milk in a minute. Are you? Naruto laughed. Slow down there, I'll answer all of your questions in time, he chuckled, as his baritone voice sent shivers down the spines of all of the Kunoichi. Firstly, I've mostly been training these past several years with an old friend. I don't know exactly how strong I am. Lee, you will no longer be my rival if you use the words, flame of youth, or the stupid sunshine no jutsu. About the dating and marriage and whatnot, I'm sorry ladies, but I do not deserve to be with any of you. This, of course, set the hearts of all the Kunoichi racing once more. Anyways, continued Naruto, my jutsu I would like to keep secret for a little bit longer. It took forever to learn how to perform and reduce the number of hand seals, so I do not wish for a couple of copycats stealing my precious jutsu right away. Sasuke and Kakashi woke up, sneezing. With that, Naruto disappeared with another flash to the amazement of the crowd. He's so cool, I wish I could have a boyfriend like him, sighed a young genin Kunoichi, earning a few glares from the older Kunoichi. For the first time in 4 years, Ino had a true smile on her face. She didn't really like how all of the other Kunoichi were going gaga over the new Naruto, but it was true. He was, for the lack of a better word, hot. Ino started to get hot and flustered, so she closed her eyes and listened to the conversation on the streets. You really want to buy that? Hey, let's go grab a bite to eat. Where the hell are you touching? A white-haired ninja holding a notebook flew through the air. Have you seen? I'm tired. Perfectly toned muscles. Nice. And those blue eyes. Barbecue pork. Those whiskers. Troublesome. He's so dreamy. Ino was startled from her reverie with a slight wave of jealousy. As a faint blush started to creep into her cheeks, she quickly hurried on, trying to ignore the various women and some men crushing on the former brat of Konoha. The truth was, Ino had always had a little soft spot for her fellow blonde, and it wasn't just because they shared the same hair color. Maybe it was because of her clan's special jutsu, but Ino had always been good at reading people's minds. Right from the beginning, from their first day in Ninja Academy, she could tell that he was a boy who hid a great sorrow behind a mask. Sure, he was constantly grinning like a stupid idiot, but there was something deeper, a hidden emotion underneath the mask. She wanted to approach him and try to understand why he deliberately hid from the world, but was sidetracked when Forehead Girl declared her undying love for Sasuke-kun. Unfortunately, her young school-girl mind would not back down to a challenge. After all, it was the Uchiha Sasuke that everyone was talking about. As she grew older, she looked back and regretted her decision to get to know Naruto better. It seemed as if fate itself was keeping the two blondes apart when they were assigned to different teams. On the outside, she was groaning because she couldn't be with Sasuke, but on the inside, she knew that she desired to be with Naruto. As time went by, she saw less and less of Naruto, as they were never assigned on missions together. She heard stories of his accomplishments and was impressed, but she saw so little of the boy that she did not give it too much thought. She was still caught up with her stupid rivalry with Sasuke. Damn it, it's so confusing, she thought, suddenly dashing to run back home. She needed a bath to calm her nerves. Instead, she collided with a figure running in the opposite direction and fell to the ground hard. You okay? Ino heard a voice tinged with concern, as well as a pair of arms lightly hoisting her back to her feet. A pair of strong arms. A pair of fine muscular, toned arms. You okay? Asked a concerned Naruto. Ino blushed and pulled back suddenly. She brought her hands up and started to do the Hinata's fingertip thing when she realized what she was doing. Blushing slightly, she looked at Naruto and murmured a soft, "Hey. Hey there yourself, Ino." Naruto flashed a wide grin. Damn it, thought Ino, it's almost like he knows what I'm thinking. Shaking her head, she hardened her resolve. Naruto, how would you like to go eat some ramen later? Naruto smiled even wider. Sounds great, I'll see you at Ichiraku's at 6, then. A loud stampede interrupted their reverie. Oh shit. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw a large number of scary fan girls storming his direction. Guess I have to end this one way or another, sighed Naruto as he crossed his fingers in a familiar seal and created some cage bunshin. Then the fangirls started to attack. The resultant scale of destruction of assault was impossible to describe, but all of the bunshins were being glomped left and right by overzealous fangirls. The memories of each bunshin were then transferred to our lovable blonde who was trying to make his escape. The horrors of all of the memories were overwhelming, and Naruto simply fainted in the middle of the street. When he woke up, he found himself staring into a pair of pale lavender eyes. Naruto-kun, are you alright? Asked the concerned Hyuga heiress. Ah, scary, shouted Naruto as he ran away again. He was still having nightmares about the crazy fangirls from earlier. Hinata blinked once and went along on her way. At the Kunoichi weekly press. Hurry up, we have to make these revisions fast. A team of journalists were scrambling about, trying to fix the top 10 most eligible bachelors in Konoha list, as well as the top 10 hottest male shinobi in Fire Country list. Hey, if I write nice things about Naruto, do you think he'll go on a date with me? Whispered one giggling girl to another. Inside Naruto's apartment, Naruto sneezed as he looked over the hellhole that served as his home for over 13 years. The door hung loosely on its hinges, as if a mob had forcefully entered the apartment. Looking inside, Naruto could see the broken furniture scattered around, the holes in the walls, and what appeared to be a brutally murdered fox strewn across the floor. The walls were covered in graffiti. The older paint had the familiar crap from the past. Die, demon brat, and trash adorned the walls. Then, Naruto caught a glimpse of what appeared to be newer paint. Naruto allowed a grin to flash over his face as he read, "Troublesome," and Kiba was here. Looking down, he was amused to see an intact potato chip. However, this brief reprieve passed as he once again swept his eyes over the demolished apartment. Naruto's companion gave a sigh. You know, Kit, just I can't read your mind doesn't mean that I can't understand what you're feeling. Sometimes you just gotta let things go. Naruto grinned. You're right, Ero Kitsune. Besides, we have a meeting to attend, don't we? With that, the two shushined out of the apartment and headed towards the Hokage's office. At the Hokage's office, Naruto was standing in front of a crowd that included the entire Konoha 12, their former Junin sensei, Iruka, a few Anbu members, as well as Jiraiya and Tsunade. Once again, the questions flowed from everywhere, forcing Naruto to wave a hand and calm the crowd. Whoa there, one at a time. Ba-chan, you first. Where have you been all this time, brat? Naruto grinned. Training, of course, and I've been all over the place meeting up with old friends. I stopped by the sand for a while. I also stopped by at Wave Country to see Tazuna, Tsunami and Inari. Oh yay, I stayed over at the Snow Country for a while as well. That was about half a year. The rest of the time, I was in my new secret training area. I've also been hunting many missing nin, as I'm sure you've noticed that the bingo book has been cut in half these past few years. Sasuke spoke up next. What about the new jutsu you used? Hey, about those. Those jutsu aren't jutsu that you can copy with that Sharingan, even if you could copy all of my hand seals. Think of it as a sort of bloodline. As for the details, regarding the one that I used against the masochistic bastard, you know, the one that cuts himself all the time, well, that jutsu basically allows me to look into his heart and see his deepest desires and fears. I believe that Miss Yamanaka's secret family jutsu originated from this ability. Perhaps we can meet up later and compare note, as I wish to further develop this ability. What do you say, Ino Heim? The use of the suffix brought a crimson blush to Ino's face, as well as looks of extreme jealousy from the other Kunoichi. Hi, stammered a flustered Ino. What the hell is wrong with me? Sure he's really hot, but I'm acting even worse than Hinata. Anyways, Naruto continued, the one that I used against Orochimaru and Kabuto. One of my personal favorites. Now, I trust that you all remember that before I left, my genjutsu abilities sucked. Jiraiya let out a snort. Naruto glared at the Toad Sennin. That's when I discovered an alternative to genjutsu. You see, genjutsu affects the senses: sight, smell, touch, taste and hearing. However, I have a bloodline limit that puts the Sharingan to shame. At this, Sasuke and Kakashi looked shocked, and Sakura aimed a chakra-laced punch at Naruto, trying to send him into the wall. Shut up Naruto, Sasuke-kun's Sharingan is unbeatable. To everybody's surprise, Naruto just stood there, taking Sakura's punch to the jaw without flinching. The temperature of the room dropped visibly as Naruto spoke with an icy voice. Haruno-san. In the past, I allowed your pathetic punches to send me through walls in hopes that your incessant violent tendencies would be quelled. It appears that I have failed. I strongly advise that you refrain from attempting to assault me, physically or, Naruto's eyes flashed dangerously, verbally. Naruto resumed his speech dryly. As I was saying, instead of affecting the senses like genjutsu, I am able to directly alter the brain telepathically, either temporarily or permanently. As you saw the other day, I can turn a couple of bloodthirsty killers into innocent little boys. I suspect that our little friends are currently at a candy store somewhere, trying to charm their way to an extra candy bar or something. At a candy store in the Sound Village. AAAACHOOOOO. You sneezed. Now you have snot coming out of your AAACHOOOOOOOOOOO. Naruto's eyes seemed to zone out momentarily, but then he snapped back to reality with a grin and looked toward Kurenai. The beautiful Kunoichi spoke up firmly, "Hi, Naruto-kun," but couldn't keep the blush from appearing across her cheeks. Fortunately, this went unnoticed by everybody except for Anko, who smirked. So, she thought to herself, the Ice Queen of Konoha is starting to melt. Gotta remember to tease her for that later. Anyways, back to what I was doing. Anko licked her lips as she continued to imagine herself and Naruto together in the Forest of Death. Kurenai-sensei, I would be delighted if you would teach me the finer points of genjutsu, as I'm sure the similarities between my techniques and yours are sure to be beneficial to us both. I have never been formally trained in genjutsu, as all of my knowledge has come from within, so there are still lots of flaws with my jutsu. The way things are, the hand seals take too long to form, and it uses a ton of chakra. So what do you say? You help me out, and I'm pretty sure that I can help you out with any problems that you may be having. Naruto flashed his trademark foxy grin. By now, some of the Kunoichi were fuming. First Ino and now Kurenai. Their own chances seemed to fade faster and faster as time went by. Anko's smile grew wider. Meanwhile, Kurenai did not completely trust her voice, so she just nodded her assent. Ahem, coughed Jiraiya. Gaki, I've been wondering something. The technique you used against Kakashi and Sasuke to get past them. You've learned the Yondaime's famous Hiraishin, haven't you? As Naruto laughed, the older shinobi's eyes widened, and the younger shinobi looked at each other in confusion. Well, when I read about it, I thought it would be a good jutsu to learn, so I set about creating my own set of three-pronged kunai. And that's when it hit me. The secret to the Hiraishin is simple. All you have to do is, the shinobi leaned forward, listening to every word. Haha, not telling, yelled the hyperactive blonde, as all of the other shinobi fell on their faces, anime style. Sasuke spoke up, what about that cage bunshin? It didn't disappear after I hit it with Chidori. Ah, about that, mused a pensive Naruto. Part of my training involved improving my weaknesses. I was kinda getting tired of all of my bunshins getting the crap kicked out of them. Remember how all of the bunshins' memories are sent back to the original? Well, I've been blown up, punched, sliced and diced, buried in sand and chidoried more times than I ever want, so I've finally figured out how to strengthen the cage bunshin. You see, because I was doing only one hand seal for Junin level jutsu, the clones were only durable enough to take one hit. In order to create a more stable bunshin, you need to add more chakra, a lot more chakra. Just one of these take about the same as 5,000 of my regular bunshins. Quote. Anko licked her lips, thinking about the things she could do with a couple of these special bunshin. Kurenai and Ino had glazed eyes with a hint of a nosebleed. Yosh. His flames of youth are burning brighter than ever before. Gai-sensei. Lee. Gai-sensei. Lee. The stunning crash of an ocean wave on rocks with an enormous sunset in the distance suddenly sprang up behind the youthful shinobi. The crowd's sweat dropped at the destructive genjutsu and Kakashi was on the floor rolling after trying to copy the damned sunset and ocean technique. They all knew what was coming next, the dreaded tooth flash jutsu. Naruto reached around Ino's waist and untied her hitai, causing Ino to blush once more. He used the reflective surface of the forehead protector to reflect the deadly rays away from the shinobi. The beams of light created by Lee and Gai's tooth flash no jutsu drilled into the walls, causing the others to sweat drop. Meanwhile, Hinata had finally worked up the courage to speak. Anyo, Naruto-kun, why did you leave Konoha in the first place? Sakura visibly paled at this, but Naruto simply deadpanned, Hina-chan, sometimes you just need to get away for a while and resolve your issues within. Just as you have dealt with your own problems, I had a few demons of my own to sort out and purge. A couple of the older shinobi jerked involuntarily, but the younger shinobi didn't pay attention. Naruto clapped his hands with a soft smile. I think it's time for us to call it a day, regrettable as it is. Don't worry, I'll still be around if any of you want to talk, spar or play. Several kunoichi fainted at this. Tsunade Bachan, Jiraiya Sensei, Iruka Sensei and Shizune Nichan, if you four could stay here for a second, please. I have something further to discuss. After the others shambled out, Anko and Kurenai had to be forcibly removed, and Naruto finished setting up soundproof seals around the office. Naruto turned to the remaining four. Now, I consider you four to be my family, so I have something very important to tell you about my travels. I'd like to introduce to you an old friend of mine, Kyubi. The older man in sable from the other day stepped forward to the shock of the four observers. Iruka was the first to scrape his jaw off the floor. Kyubi, as in the Kyubi that was sealed inside of you. Jiraiya pulled out a kunai and Tsunade settled down into her combat stance as Kyubi stepped forward. Kyubi flashed a foxy grin. Don't worry about me. I have no ill intentions towards Konoha and its citizens, even if many of them have made Naruto's life a living hell. Furthermore, although I still remember all of my demonic techniques, I only have about one tail of power. Naru-chan here absorbed most of my powers and has been trained in all of my jutsu, which is why he is so damn powerful now. Jiraiya was the first to process this new information. So you're saying that Naruto now possesses 8 tails of power. No wonder why he beat Sasuke and Kakashi so easily. Kyuubi snorted, Baka. Tell them, Kit. Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. Actually Jiraiya-sensei, I'm a bit stronger than that, he said, causing the others to sweat drop. It appears that, in order to seal a demon, the container naturally develops enough chakra to overpower the demonic chakra. Without the furball's help, I am as powerful as Kyuubi was during the attack, and with it, I am strong enough to fight all of the other tailed demons to a standstill at the same time. Quote. Still trying to recover from her shock, Tsunade managed to raise an eyebrow. So how exactly did you manage to release your dear friend? Last time I checked, it was impossible without killing you both. Well, I've been able to release Ero-sensei for a while now. If I create a cage Bunshin only using his chakra, then the Bunshin will be his Bunshin, complete with his knowledge and personality. However, as time went along, I started to absorb more and more of Ero-sensei's chakra. Things were pretty emotional as I started to absorb the 9th tail. Ero-sensei is really an awesome demon. Fortunately, because he had such little chakra left, I was able to physically separate both of us, leaving him with the chakra that he has now without causing harm to either of us. I think Dad put flaws in the seal on purpose for this exact reason. In fact, I'm sure of it. Jiraiya spoke up once again. Not that I don't mind, but why do you call the Kyuubi Ero-sensei? I thought I was Konoha's #1 super pervert. What happened to Ero-senin? Naruto and Kyuubi laughed at this. Kid, you and I are gonna go on a trip together. You still have much to learn, and it has been a while since I have taken on an apprentice. Jiraiya's face contorted into a lecherous grin. The two perverts jumped out the window with appropriately perverse grins. Ah, damn, muttered Naruto, I was hoping they'd stay a little longer. Why do you guys look so shocked? I mean, all of my teachers have been perverts. Iruka-sensei and Oji-san couldn't handle my sexy no jutsu when I was just a kid. Ebisu-sensei was a closet pervert. Kakashi-sensei would read porn all the time and Jiraiya-sensei would stop by the brothels at every town we visited. At this, Iruka blushed while Tsunade and Shizune's sweat dropped. One final thing. I think it's about time that I step up and take my inheritance, nay. Naruto rummaged through the desk before pulling out a small, golden key. Can't wait to see what Dad's house looks like. With a foxy grin and a bright white flash, Naruto disappeared, leaving the remaining 3 flabbergasted. Tsunade pulled out a bottle of sake. I'm gonna need this, so don't even try taking this away, Shizune. To Tsunade's surprise, Shizune pulled out her own bottle and Iruka took out yet another. Bottoms up, they mumbled, downing the sake straight from the bottle. It was the greatest revival of fangirldom in Konoha's history. After the realization that Sasuke and Sai were gay, only the creepy yaoi fangirls had anything to celebrate, and even then, it wasn't as fun when they were actually gay. Now that an unattached Naruto had burst onto the scene, love-struck village girls and Kunoichi alike were swarming Konoha. It was as if a new light had swept through the village, in the form of our favorite hyperactive blonde. Perhaps the happiest civilian in Konoha at the moment was Tyuki, owner of Ichiraku's ramen stand. When Naruto left, business went down by more than half. The Konoha 12 and their sensei would drop by now and then, but things were never the same without the hyperactive blonde ninja. Now that the crazy ninja had made his return, his stand was swamped by women and Kunoichi ordering ramen hoping for a chance at a lunch date with Naruto. This rapid influx of the female population naturally attracted perverts like Kiba, Kakashi and Jiraiya, who also bought ramen to have an excuse to ogle the women. This made Tyuki very happy just watching all the ryo flow into his wallet. However, what really made Tyuki happy was that Naruto was finally being accepted by the community that had shunned him for now. Having served ramen for the demon container for many years, Tyuki had come to view Naruto as much more than a valued customer. Years of serving ramen to the hyperactive blonde had allowed Tuki to develop deep fondness and respect for Naruto. Now that he was back, an all-you-can-eat ramen fest seemed appropriate. Speaking of which, Kya, it's Naruto-kun. Don't let him escape. Tuki grinned and set a large bowl of miso ramen on the counter. In a flash, Naruto was at the booth, ready to dig in, but the ever-persistent fangirls were starting to piss off Tuki and Naruto. Finally, Naruto snapped. With a tick on his forehead, he shouted to the old man to close his eyes. Focusing his chakra, he called out, "Green Beast Harem Jutsu." The crazy fangirls were treated to the horrifying sight of multiple guys and Lees hugging each other, causing them all to faint. With a contented sigh, Naruto finished off his last bowl, left some money and with a conspiratorial wink to Ayame, Hiroshined away once again. Ino had finished closing up shop for the day and was rummaging through her closet. After a bit of searching, she emerged with a small rectangular case. Settling onto her bed, she pulled out the item contained within. It was a beaten and worn down Hittite. Flashback. Ino was on her way back home after a late-night interrogation session. She had just been accepted by Ibiki as an apprentice a few days ago and he was already working her to the bone. Truthfully, Ino was glad that Ibiki had taken such great interest in her abilities. Ino had often questioned her strength and worth as a kunoichi, a self-doubt that was further emphasized once Sakura started to receive special attention from the Godime herself. Ino snorted. The bitch had likely gotten Naruto to ask Tsunade to take her on as an apprentice. As she walked along the street, she barely noticed the orange blur that rushed past her. Was that Naruto? What's he doing at this hour? Curious, Ino sped off in the direction that her fellow blonde had rushed off to. Minutes later, she arrived at the village gate and saw Naruto hold out his Hittite. What's going on? Is Naruto running away from Konoha? She watched, transfixed as the Hittite dropped to the ground. She remained motionless until a loud cry jolted her from her reverie. Yeah. Ino walked over to the Hittite and picked it up. Her delicate fingers traced the leaf symbol. Just what is going on? End flashback. A few months later, when it was apparent that Naruto was not coming back soon, Tsunade had gathered the younger generation of shinobi and explained Naruto's connection with the Kyuubi. Quite a few of the shinobi expressed outrage at having a demon within their ranks until Shino logically pointed out that a tenant and its container are two separate entities. The buzzing insects hidden in his sleeves threatened to suck the shinobi of every drop of chakra. To Ino, many of her questions regarding Naruto became instantly clear: his isolation, determination and fierce loyalty. With Naruto's reappearance in Konoha, Ino's feelings for the blonde returned tenfold. It didn't hurt that he came back looking like a god. She pictured his strong arms holding her tightly while those luscious lips trailed along her neck, leaving butterfly kisses along the way. He'd then force her onto the bed while she ran her hands over his firm chest and rock-hard abs. After that, she would wrap her milky white legs around his waist. Ino blinked and sniffed the air, smelling the strong scent of her arousal. She sighed. Damn, I just did the laundry yesterday. Whenever Ino lost herself in her fantasies involving herself and a certain blonde shinobi, she would go out for a walk, as the cool air usually served to calm her down. Oftentimes, she would end up at the top of the Hokage monument, where Naruto was known to frequent. Ino would sit there trying to figure out exactly what drew Naruto to that place. Soon enough, she found herself at the top of the Hokage monument. Ino stretched out her arms and breathed in the fresh air. She glanced over the heads of the 5 Hokage and spotted a lone figure seated atop the Yondaime's head. Ino walked to the seated figure, ready to call out when the man turned around. Ino-chan. Ino was grateful that the night managed to obscure the deep flush that spread across her cheeks when Naruto addressed her. Images of her earlier fantasy assaulted her mind, but she forcibly reorganized her thoughts. Yeah, it's me, Naruto-kun. Since when have I called him Naruto-kun? If Naruto picked up on the suffix, he gave no indication that he had noticed. Instead, he patted the ground next to him, silently offering Ino a seat, which she happily took. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, Ino started to shiver. She began to rub her arms in an effort to warm herself up when she felt Naruto drape his cloak over her shoulders. She gave Naruto a look of gratefulness while trying not to stare at his chest and arms. She decided as she started to ogle the blonde god at her side. She was so focused on undressing Naruto with her eyes that she almost missed his question. So Ino-chan, tell me what you've been up to while I've been gone. Ino proceeded to give Naruto a condensed history of her life. When she was done, Naruto leaned back and sighed. Must be nice then, huh? Years of interrogation had trained Ino to pick up on the subtleties of a person's mannerisms. She instantly noticed the slight sag of his shoulders and the faint, wistful sigh. Naruto, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for laughing at you and your dreams, never believing in you. I ignored you and I wasn't there for you when you needed a friend. I've probably hurt you deeper than I can even imagine. Quote. Ino squirmed uncomfortably during the silence. Finally, Naruto replied. So you know about the fox, then? It wasn't a question, but Ino still nodded. Naruto laid back with his arms folded behind his back and eyes closed. It really hurt, Ino-chan. The feeling of being alone, having nobody to turn to for encouragement and constantly having your dreams thrown in your face is the worst thing in the world. I remember everything that has happened to me, all of the beatings, the hateful glares and whispers, everything. Ino hung her head in shame, berating her younger self for her stupidity. Thank you, Ino-chan. Ino-chan, you were the second person to ever apologize to me, after Iruka-sensei. It really means a lot to me. I forgive you. Ino bowed her head, a light blush adorning her beautiful features. SSS. So what are you going to do now, Naruto-kun? Naruto sat back up and sighed. I don't know, Ino-chan. Probably wander over the place, continue to travel. Konoha doesn't need me anymore. You can't do that, Naruto-kun. We all missed you. Quote. We want you to stay here with us. Naruto snorted, raising Ino's ire. I want you to stay, Naruto-kun. Ino gasped and clasped her hand over her mouth. She didn't mean to blurt that out loud. She cast a nervous glance at the frozen blonde next to her before preparing to run away to avoid any future embarrassment. Before she could flee, a hand darted forward and snatched her wrist, gently turning her around to face Naruto. Do you really mean that? Ino looked into Naruto's eyes and instantly melted. His eyes conveyed such an expressive mixture of hope, joy and happiness that Ino's heart instantly went out to the blonde. She shyly nodded. I've fallen in love with him. Slowly, Naruto leaned towards Ino. I think. Ino reciprocated the action, heart pounding and her lips slightly parted in anticipation. I can. Naruto placed one hand underneath Ino's chin while Ino placed her hands on his shoulders. Begin to. Their lips were inches apart. Ino could feel Naruto's warm breath tickling her face. Ino closed her eyes. Almost there. Just one more. Go kid go. That's my apprentice. Make me proud to have lived inside you all these years. Take her when you get back home. Take her now. Naruto and Ino instantly separated from one another with expressions of shock, embarrassment, mortification and anger intermingled amongst one another. Kyuubi. Jiraiya. What the hell are you two doing here? Kyuubi and Jiraiya materialized in front of the pair. I never thought I'd live to see this day. That's right, Kit. Don't you just want to rip off her clothes right now and try out the position from Ika Ika Volume 4, page 95. Quote. Jiraiya took Naruto's silence as approval and turned to Kyuubi. Yosh. It seems that the brat's flames of perversion shine brightly. Indeed. If I cannot match his level of perversion, I will read 2 whole ICHA books while leering at all the women that walk by. And if I cannot do that, I will steal 50 pairs of panties in an hour. Jiraiya jumped towards the Demon King and the two embraced in a hug. Behind them, the background shifted to depict a sunset and waves crashing against a rock. Oh, Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Jiraiya-kun. Kyuubi-sensei. Ahem. The pervert duo looked over each other's shoulders to find Naruto and Ino crouched behind them with an explosive tag in hand. Naruto quickly attached his to Kyuubi's posterior while Ino did the same to Jiraiya. Jiraiya turned back to Kyuubi. This is going to hurt like hell, right? Pray to the god of porn, my dear apprentice. Well, this is it. With a resounding boom, the explosive tags ignited, sending the pair hurtling through space, followed by a disemboweled wail. It looks like Team Hentai's blasting off. Ino cheered and Naruto did a tiny victory dance as Jiraiya and Kyuubi vanished in a twinkle of light. Their eyes met momentarily, and they quickly turned away, blushing. Well, I should be heading back home soon. Why yeah, I'll see you later, Ino-chan. The two future lovers parted, blissfully unaware of the future in store. The next day, Ino was seated outside her favorite cafe, absent-mindedly stirring a cup of tea and picking at a half-eaten salad. Ibiki had let her out early for lunch. It wasn't her fault that she was too distracted to work. Damn that Naruto for getting her all hot and bothered. She had gone home that night and went to bed, trying to scratch her Naruto itch. As a result, she showed up to the interrogation and torture department late, cranky and sore. Ino started her rounds, grumbling. The first criminal was a convicted rapist, and Ino wasted no time reducing the vile scum into a whimpering puddle of flesh. She quickly moved on to the next prisoner, a known drug lord, and quickly dismantled the man with the same efficiency. Ibiki watched on in a strange mixture of horror and pride as his apprentice systematically broke down all of the hardened criminals in custody. However, Ibiki felt that it was necessary to intervene when a bloodstained and slightly maniacal Ino stalked towards a terrified teenager convicted of shoplifting. After kindly suggesting that Ino run home for a shower as well as an early lunch, Ibiki decided to be the nice guy and let the teen leave. He probably needed a change of pants, judging from the putrid odor coming from his direction. Ino was roused from her musings when she heard a soft rumbling in the distance. A white flash lit up the streets, after which a panicked Naruto could be seen. What the hell? Hey, Ino-chan, you have to hide me, quick, the fangirls are after me. Naruto. That's the first thing you say to me. Where are your manners? Hurry, Ino-chan, hide me, they're trying to rape me. Ino looked Naruto up and down. He certainly looked, wearing the tight muscle t-shirt and pants that accentuated that nice, firm. Ino quickly quashed the sudden urge to rape Naruto in the middle of the street with everybody watching. Instead, she threw Naruto underneath her table, much to Naruto's relief. Naruto's relief changed to embarrassment as he soon realized that he had a clear view of Ino's baby blue panties. I wonder if Ino is wearing a matching bra. Damn you, Ero-sensei, Ero-senin. Somewhere in the sky, Jiraiya and Kyuubi sneezed, sending them flying further away. Naruto moved to crawl out from underneath the table to avoid further embarrassment, but immediately ducked back underneath the table when he spotted a large group of girls prowling around, similar to a bunch of foxes searching for a rabbit. A hot rabbit. That was close, thought Naruto before a hand reached underneath the table and violently jerked him from underneath. After Ino had thrown Naruto underneath the table, she concocted an impromptu plan. She uncrossed her legs and slightly parted them, hopefully giving Naruto an eyeful. She was about to trail one hand along her thigh, when a voice interrupted her thoughts. Yamanaka-san, I like you. Please go out with me. Ino looked up to see a village boy with his head bowed, holding out a bouquet of flowers that she had arranged for the boy the day before. Stupid bastard. She slapped the fool in the face. I arranged that for you. You don't give a girl the flowers that she arranged and ask her out. Besides, I already have a boyfriend. Oh, who? Single quote dot. He might be persistent, but he's still a bastard. Hardening her resolve, she reached under the table and pulled Naruto out. The other boy's eyes narrowed. I don't believe you, what was he doing under there? Ino quickly answered, scratching an itch I had. Neither of the boys missed the innuendo, but the villager quickly regained his composure. So a lunch date, huh? Yeah, we were eating together before you interrupted us. I only see one meal on the table. What about your boyfriend? Ino smirked. He was eating, trust me. I know he's eagerly anticipating dessert. By then, Naruto's brain had already crashed as visions of Ino removing her baby blue underwear assaulted his mind. Still, the villager was persistent, so Ino decided to take charge. You want proof, huh? Then watch this. She grabbed the back of Naruto's face and mashed her face into his, sucking his face off. Ino then grabbed his hands and tried to place them at the small of her back, but Naruto's hands slipped a bit and landed on her. The shock of felling a woman's posterior for the first time caused Naruto to clench his hands and squeeze Ino's butt, eliciting an erotic moan from the Kunoichi. Meanwhile, the fangirls noticed Naruto being pulled out from under the table. Before they could approach their blonde hottie to offer their services, one Yamanaka Ino grabbed Naruto and started to make out. The fangirls were even more surprised to see Naruto return the kiss. Even worse, this was Yamanaka Ino, the Kunoichi who had single-handedly defeated the entire Sasuke Yaoi platoon at age 9 wielding only a blunt practice kunai. Naruto was lost in his own world. His first real kiss with Yamanaka Ino, the beautiful blonde he had secretly crushed on before he knew what a crush was. He gasped in surprise as Ino licking her lips and felt a spark of electricity as Ino's tongue entered his mouth, ravaging every crevice of his mouth. It was then that Naruto decided to try something spontaneous. Thanking Kami for his greatly improved chakra control, Naruto releasing a steady stream of chakra from to the tenketsu in his tongue and slid his tongue into Ino's eager mouth. The effect was instantaneous, and Ino would have completely collapsed had Naruto not supported her. To Ino, Naruto's chakra-laced tongue entering her mouth was mind-blowingly orgasmic. It took all of her shinobi training and focus to not come right away. Still, Ino noted that neither of them were experts at kissing, as she had only kissed Shikamaru a few times during her genin years and the only kiss that Naruto had was likely the accidental one he had with Sasuke at the academy. It was just something that the two of them simply needed to practice. As she moaned when another orgasmic wave coursed through her body, Ino made a mental note to practice with Naruto more often. The couple slowly broke apart, slightly panting. They lovingly stared into each other's eyes until a voice broke the silence. Naruto-kun, Tsunade-sama wishes to see you. I suppose Ino-san should go as well. Naruto and Ino turned to see a red-faced Shizune, desperately trying to avoid eye contact with either of the blondes. Naruto sighed, we can use the Hiroshin, then. Ino immediately draped herself over Naruto's body while Shizune chose to hold onto Naruto's outstretched arm. With a flash, the trio disappeared, leaving no sign of their presence, except for a cup of tea, a half-eaten salad and a lump of change. Tsunade was drifting off to sleep when a flash illuminated her office. She looked up and saw Naruto standing there with Ino wrapped around Naruto and Shizune hanging off his arm. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. I must say, seeing you with Naruto is a surprise, Ino, but you too, Shizune. Tsunade's apprentice stepped back, blushing and shaking her head. Naruto spoke up, saving the blushing Kunoichi from further embarrassment. What's up, Bachan? Tsunade resisted the urge to punch Naruto in the face and instead tossed a scroll at Naruto, who deftly caught it and began to read its contents. As Naruto continued to read through the document, the tick mark on his forehead appeared and started to violently pulse. When he finished, he looked up and glared at Tsunade. What the hell is up with this? Clan Restoration Act. Tsunade stared right back, refusing to give ground. You are the last of your clan, so you need to repopulate your clan, seeing as your entire clan sacrificed themselves during the Kyuubi attack. Yeah, sorry about that, Kit. Jiraiya and Kyuubi climbed through the window and entered the office, acting as if they hadn't been sent into orbit recently. Jiraiya gleefully pulled out a notebook. Ah, you make me so proud, brat. So how does it feel knowing that you are about to live every man's dream soon? Tsunade and Kyuubi sniggered as a red-faced Naruto pointed at Jiraiya. Hey, shut up Ero Sennin. That's why no women ever want to have with you, baka. Jiraiya hung his head in shame. Besides, Naruto continued in a more subdued voice, I don't think Ino-chan would like me having another girlfriend. Yeah, agreed Kyuubi, even if she did approve, she'd probably only let you marry the really fat and ugly village girls. Jiraiya put on a look of mock horror until Ino leaned towards Naruto's voice and murmured so that the rest of the people in the office could hear, actually, Naru-kun, that's not a problem at all. Did I forget to mention that I'm? Naruto's eyes glazed over while Kyuubi and Jiraiya fainted. Elsewhere in Fire Country, two Kunoichi wearing sound headbands were headed towards Konoha. That goddamn snake cunt-sucking manwhore. What kind of mission is this? Calm down, Tayuya-chan, you know what that Orochimaru-sama will do to you. He's been in a terrible mood ever since he was released from Uzumaki's jutsu. Quote, Tayuya-chan, fine, let's just hurry the up and get this shit over with. Roger that. At first, Naruto was taken aback by the sheer number of women flocking around him when he left the Hokage's tower, but he shrugged it off as the strange behavior of fangirls. Even Shizune Nichan had given him funny looks as he left the building. Ino was by his side, shooting death glares at all of the lusting girls. Somewhat oblivious to the icy death match underway, Naruto continued with Ino on their impromptu date, which for Ino meant a lot of shopping. Each time Ino emerged from the dressing room, she carried a large bundle of clothes in her arms while Naruto prayed for Gama-chan's health. Strangely enough, his precious frog wallet never lost any weight, as all of the clerks waived the purchases and instead left him little slips of papers with phone numbers hastily scribbled. Each time they would leave a store, Naruto would create a cage bunshin to carry the bags back to Ino's apartment while Ino ripped the hussy's phone number to shreds. Ino would then drag Naruto to the next store, and the steadily growing collection of fangirls continued to following behind. The Kunoichi in the crowd unsuccessfully tried the replacement technique on Ino in hopes that they would be able to snag the blonde god for themselves. Finally, Naruto had enough of the rampaging females. Whirling around, he turned to confront the army of estrogen. As he did so, he saw many of the girls hurriedly tucking away a small colored pamphlet, but one teenager was too wrapped up in her fantasy to notice. With a flash, Naruto disappeared and reappeared in the midst of his fan club and plucked the questionable document from the unsuspecting girl's hands. Blocking a slap aimed at his and dodging a hand that shot out towards his groin, Naruto pored over the pamphlet with wide eyes. Damn, thought Enko and Yugao at the same time. The pamphlet fluttered to the floor. On it was a picture of Naruto in the good guy pose with a caption underneath. Want to date a shinobi? Now you can, thanks to the Clan Restoration Act. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, the son of the Yondaime, is the last of his clan and is looking for strong, beautiful women to love and cherish. This message was brought to you by the fantastic Team Hentai. What the hell, Ero-sensei, Ero-sennin. Deep inside Kyuubi's lairs, Jiraiya and Kyuubi were giggling as they outlined the next Ika Ika epic, Ika Ika Harem Dreams. Suddenly, a cold shiver ran down their spines. Something bad was going to happen to them soon. Marry me, Naruto-sama. Father my children, have with me. Naruto's eyebrow twitched as the demands grew louder and more vulgar. Finally, he held his hand up for silence, effectively stopping the shouting. Okay, listen up everybody. It's true that I have to marry multiple women to restore my clan. However, I am not going to just sleep around for the hell of it. I love my precious people too much to do that. If you wish to go out with me, Ino-chan has to approve. Using the Hiroshin, Naruto appeared behind Ino and wrapped his arms around her body in a warm hug. The other females watched this, fighting the urge to either squeal or kill the blonde Kunoichi. A loud voice cut through the air. It's not fair. Why do we have to ask permission from Yamanaka-senpai to ride your large, meaty? The crowd turned as one and stared at a red-faced Hanabi. Hyuga Hanabi, the daughter of the head of the most prestigious clan in Konoha. A clan that rose to power thanks to their powerful eyes that granted the user a near 360-degree field of vision, as well as the ability to see through walls. Apparently, the Byakugan could see through clothing as well. Yamanaka Ino fainted in Naruto's arms. With a sigh, Naruto picked Ino up in her arms and Hiroshined away to leave the girls to squabble some more. Anko turned to Hanabi with a maniacal grin on her face. So, kid, how big was it? Hanabi's grin was a reflection of Anko's own. Huge. Anko licked her lips. Yugao creamed in her pants. Naruto shivered as he arrived at the Yamanaka household. His newly developed fangirl sense was firing on all cylinders. Shoving those thoughts aside, he shifted Ino's in his arms and knocked on the door. After a moment, Yamanaka Inoichi answered the door. Ah, good evening Namikaze-san, what can I do? He froze as he saw an unconscious Ino in Naruto's arms. His gaze hardened as his eyes focused on Naruto, or to be specific, his left hand. When Naruto moved Ino to knock on the door, he had slid his left hand underneath Ino's butt in order to maintain stability. Before the Yamanaka patriarch arrived at the door, Naruto had forgotten to move his hand away from Ino's shapely. Oops. Naruto watched in morbid fascination as Inoichi's face went through an interesting progression of facial expressions and colors. Pale, normal, white, shock, red, anger, purple, unbridled rage, blue. Naruto was a very brave shinobi, and willing to do anything to save a comrade. If you asked him to rescue a friend's puppy from the deepest Akatsuki lair, he'd do it right away. Hell, he'd even join Lee and Guy in wearing those ugly jumpsuits if it would cure a friend's cold, he'd do it. After a great deal of consideration, of course. However, there were two situations that Naruto would do anything in order to escape, including abandoning his comrades, Kakashi's saying be damned. The first was but with Orochimaru. No way. The second was facing angry parents thinking that he had violated their princess's purity. Naruto gently laid Ino on the ground before retreating to his apartment on a flash. Inoichi started to follow, but his paternal instincts took over. He gently shook Ino awake. Princess, wake up. Daddy, where's Naru-kun? Don't worry, Ino-heim. Namikaze won't get to you anymore. Daddy will protect you. Ino's face flushed red, not in embarrassment, but in anger. Daddy, you baka. She hit her father in the stomach with a chakra-laced punch and stalked into the house and slammed the door in Inoichi's face. The next day, Naruto was at the Tsunade's office to pick up his mission. He looked down at the scroll and scowled. Bachan, what the hell is this? An S-ranked mission to capture Tora the cat. I did this as a genin, and besides, I refused to chase that damn animal. Tsunade resisted the urge to throw her paperweight at the fuming blonde. Naruto, Tora's evasion capabilities have constantly improved with each capture mission. It took Kiba, Shino and Hinata 5 hours to spot the cat, and then a strike force of Lee, Tenten and Neji to capture Tora after an hour of battling. Naruto's eyes widened before his face settled into a comfortable smirk. Finally, a worthy challenge for my skills. Very well, Tsunade Bachan, I accept this mission. Expect to see me soon. With a white flash, Naruto left the office. He had a feisty feline to hunt. 3 hours later, Naruto was tired, thirsty and extremely pissed off. He had spotted the feline several times and had engaged it in battle on a couple of occasions. Naruto had managed to shave off a few hairs from Tora's tail when he had caught it by surprise, but that was it. Naruto was not quite as lucky. Tora had managed to weave through his defense and unleash a devastating fury of claw swipes that left scratch marks all over his arms and shredded all of his clothing. Ignoring the lustful stares of the women on the streets, Naruto stumbled through the streets and headed off towards Tora the Devil Cat. He thanked Kami that he had managed to plant a tracker seal on the feline during their last encounter. The furry bastard had nothing on the former container of the great demon fox. Training Ground 43 was quiet. The grass was green, the sky was blue with puffy white clouds. A gentle breeze stirred the grass and leaves. A lone cat could be seen walking through the grass. The cat had a red ribbon affixed to its right ear and a large scar in the middle of its forehead. Still, the training ground was peaceful. A lone cry echoed through the training grounds. "I'll kill you, you damn bastard." Instantly on alert, Tora turned around and scratched the blonde shinobi in the face. The blonde jumped back, clutching his bleeding face. Tora smirked inwardly. It was another grand day. Nobody could defeat the mighty Tora. The shinobi burst into flames and with a jolt, Tora was hoisted into the air by the neck and came face to face with a sadistic Naruto. Maybe today wasn't such a great day after all. As Naruto stared at Tora, he felt an odd, tingling sensation in the hand holding Tora. Brushing that aside, he reached inside his pouch and pulled out a tri-pronged kunai. "Alright, you little bastard, I'm going to neuter you and feed your testicles to Sasuke Tem." Before he could proceed with his plan, he suddenly recognized the sensation in his hand. It was an advanced genjutsu, but what could it be hiding? Naruto focused his chakra and muttered, "Kai." The resultant explosion and surge of chakra blew Naruto back, causing him to relinquish his hold on Tora, who was enveloped in smoke. As Naruto looked on, he heard a decidedly female voice come from the smoke. "What were you going to do to me?" The smoke started to fade away, revealing a figure that looked very human and very female. As the smoke dissipated, Naruto realized two things. 1. She had a small, red ribbon in her luxurious brunette hair. 2. She was completely. Naruto's brain shut down as he fainted. Elsewhere, a figure emerged from the shadow, a pamphlet in hand, the very same pamphlet that had nearly incited a riot among the women in Konoha. "It appears that I have found your weakness, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto-san. Your foolish love for women shall be your downfall once Leader Sama finds out." With that, the mysterious figure slipped back into the shadows to report his discovery to the rest of the Akatsuki members. Leader Sama was not very happy. He had ordered the Akatsuki to attack Konoha with Orochimaru in hopes of luring out the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, only for the blonde to turn an absolute victory into crushing defeat. After taking into account Naruto's newly revealed powers, any attempt to assault Konoha seemed likely to fail. Leader Sama scowled. Until they discovered the former Jinchuriki's weakness, it would be impossible to progress with their plans. "Leader Sama, I have discovered the Kyuubi Cantainer's weakness." Leader perked up, hardly daring to believe his ears. Had Zetsu really found a weakness, or was he still delusional after his beatdown at the hands of Tsunade? The plant man handed a pamphlet to Leader, who smirked after he read through the flyer. "So, the brat is weak against women. How very interesting. Zetsu, gather all our members for an important meeting. This Uzumaki brat will meet his match soon." Naruto sneezed, causing the now human Tora to flinch back in disgust. "Ew, that's gross. I didn't know that retards got sick." "Hey, shut up. Man, someone must be talking about me." HMPH. Tora turned to walk away, but being unused to bipedal walking, tripped and started to fall. Right before she hit the ground, two strong arms grabbed her, halting her decent. She looked up to see Naruto grinning at her. She wrestled out of his grasp and glared at him. "What are you looking at, shithead? Are you a human or a cat?" Tora sighed. "I'm a full-blooded human, and I was a genin fresh out of academy." It was my first C-rank mission, and I tried to use henge, but I ended up screwing up the hand seal on accident. Turned myself into a cat, and I couldn't change back because I couldn't form seals to channel my chakra. Naruto couldn't help it and sniggered at Tora's misfortune, much to the former feline's irritation. Hey, shut up, sheesh, no need to swear. I'll say whatever I want. Got it, asshole. She spun on her heel and stalked away, only to fall to the ground once more. Naruto's sweat dropped as Tora once again swore up a storm. Is there anyone who swears as much as she does? Over at the village gates, Tayuya and Karen were sneaking into Konoha when Tayuya sneezed, alerting an Anbu squad to their presence. What do you want? Karen and the Anbu squad sweat dropped. Tora, you okay? Naruto looked in concern as Tora clutched at her ankle, grimacing in pain. URG, I think I twisted my ankle. You're a shinobi, right? Use some healing jutsu on me right now. Shit, the only medical jutsu Kyuubi has taught me was the contraception jutsu. Stupid arrow sensei. I don't know any medical jutsu, but I can take you to someone who does. Then hurry thee up. Naruto sighed and pulled off his shirt and pants before tossing his clothing to the girl on the ground. Tora looked up in surprise. What's this for? Get dressed. I'm not taking you into town. Tora looked down at her state of undress and flushed red. She quickly grabbed her clothes and covered her sensitive areas. Turn around, you pervert. Naruto complied and waited while Tora gradually slid the clothes on. Alright, now take me to someone who can treat me fast. Naruto sighed. Were all women always this bossy? He turned towards Tora to pick her up and froze. In her undressed state, Naruto had tried his best to avoid staring at Tora. Looking at Tora, he was struck with the sheer elegance and beauty that the brunette seemed to exude. Tora flipped Naruto the bird. What the hell are you looking at? Charming. Naruto hoisted Tora over his shoulder and darted off to Tsunade's office, ignoring her repeated protests and threats of violence. Tsunade enjoyed sending teams on Tora retrieval missions to watch them get riled up. Even the ever-docile Hinata was foaming at the mouth when she returned with scratches all over her face. She had seen it all, except for Naruto's reaction. That's why, when the damned cat had run away yet again, Tsunade immediately assigned the mission to Naruto and waited for the blonde to return. When Tsunade heard Naruto's dulcet tones carry through the door with the customary "Bachan," Tsunade was prepared for many things. She expected to see a worn, yet triumphant Naruto hauling a yowling Tora by the tail. It wouldn't surprise her to see Naruto return empty-handed, asking for backup. Hell, he could have brought Tora back in a body bag and Tsunade wouldn't have batted an eyelash. That's why, when Naruto walked in with a grumpy expression on his face hoisting an equally pissed brunette over her shoulder, Tsunade's pre-planned smirk fell apart to be replaced by one of befuddlement. Naruto placed the brunette on Tsunade's desk, dodging the kick aimed for his face. Heal her, please. After Tsunade applied her jutsu, she turned to Naruto. Okay, Naruto. I told you to go and fetch a cat and you come back in only your boxers with a strange girl wearing your clothes. What the hell happened? This is Tora. She was stuck in an advanced cat henge all this time. Tsunade snickered, while Tora shot a death glare at the Hokage. So brat, have you done the nasty with her yet? I know that your precious Inohime would just love a threesome. Naruto turned pale and cast a nervous look at Tora, who was turning an interesting shade of red while furiously waving at Jiraiya and Kyuubi, who had appeared out of nowhere, to stop. That's my boy. You're going to be my inspiration for future Ika Ika. Naruto stepped away from a shaking Tora and started planning his escape routes. Kit, you're on your way to the pinnacle of perversion, the massive orgy. Make me proud. Tora snapped. Quote. Jiraiya and Kyuubi nodded, frightened beyond belief. My god, I thought that Hanzo was scary, but this woman, I can't move. Tsunade watched with her mouth hanging open as Tora verbally castrated one of the legendary Sannin and the King of Demons. The perverted duo visibly gulped as Tora stalked over to them, pulling back both of her fists before sending them crashing into their faces, sending Jiraiya and Kyuubi flying away. It looks like Team Hentai's blasting off again. Tora turned to a whimpering Naruto and dragged him out of the Hokage's tower by the ear while Tsunade watched the two. Something tells me we're going to see more of her soon. I sure hope there isn't anyone else like her here. Out in the streets, Tora released Naruto and dumped him unceremoniously in the street. So, where am I living? Well, I figured that if you didn't have anywhere else to stay, you could always stay with me. Tora turned to yell at Naruto, but felt her breath hitch when she stared into his warm, blue eyes. She felt a strange sensation settle in her stomach. What's happening to me? Naruto. Naruto smiled and put his hands at the back of his head, making Tora's heart flutter. It's not possible, I can't have. Her musings were interrupted as she let out a sneeze. The force of the blast blew her head back, causing her to collide painfully with the woman behind her. Yuya and Karen tired, hungry and pissed. It was supposed to have been a simple mission, find Uzumaki Naruto and discover his weakness. Suicidal, but simple nonetheless. However, after narrowly escaping the Anbu, their target was nowhere to be found. ARRRGH. This shit. I say we go back to Orochimaru and tell him to shove this mission up his. To Yuya-chan, calm down. You know we can't do that. Orochimaru-sama is just too powerful, and these curse seals just make things worse for us. Yuya took a couple of calming breaths. Cursing her master in the middle of Konoha might not be the best idea. Instead, she decided to fantasize about ripping Orochimaru and Kabuto to shreds with her summons. Her musings were interrupted as she let out a sneeze. The force of the blast blew her head back, causing her to collide painfully with the woman behind her. Meanwhile at the Akatsuki base, the members were gathered around in a circle, most of them wearing looks of shock and horror. We have to do what? Leader sighed. Why was it so hard for his group to understand the brilliance of his plans? According to the data that Zetsu has provided, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's only weakness is his love for women. Kakazu spoke up, why can't we just have Konan and Deidara go and seduce the brat? Deidara's indignant voice piped, I'm a guy, damn it. Itachi giggled, causing everyone to pause and stare. Itachi was showing emotion. Something was wrong. Itachi pulled out a stick of Pocky and glared at everybody. Leader coughed to regain attention. Even with this weakness, Namikaze is not a foe to be underestimated. That's why all of you will have to apply this seal to your bodies, temporarily turning you all into females. Not even the legendary medic Nin Tsunade would be able to tell. Grumbling, the Akatsuki members lined up one by one for the temporary change. Leader Sama's orders are absolute. No matter what. When Yuya and Tora bumped heads that Konoha day, the winds of change blew through Konoha, signaling new, chaotic times. The fiery beauties turned as one to stare at each other, and the atmosphere around the two dropped considerably. Oh shit, thought Naruto and Karen. Who the is this? Thought Tora and Yuya. Back in their secret lair, Jiraiya and Kyuubi were busy posting recruitment posters throughout Konoha. They had agreed that in order to expand their territory and influence, it was imperative that they recruit new members. So, Jiraiya-kun, how many people do you believe will apply to join our club? Jiraiya grinned. More than you'd think, Kyuubi-sensei. Konoha is full of perverts. We just need to band together. Lee broke off his meditation and looked on in concern at his beloved Guy-sensei, as the older man's face suddenly contorted in pain. Guy-sensei, what's the matter? Lee, I just sensed a shift in the atmosphere. It was as if the very flame of youth was being sucked out of the air. Yosh. Then I will train twice as hard to restore Konoha's flames of youth. That's the attitude, Lee. However, I feel as though we must work to spread our youthfulness to our fellow peers. Yosh. Then starting tomorrow we will recruit new green beasts.